How, how many people can you say lived their passions? Not partook in them, but lived them. How many souls out there have put something so deep into a work that they themselves are ultimately indifferent to the meaning of it because the very it of it simply happened to require expression? The world is simply too big and unknowable to not look into ways to extract the richness of expression it incites, to fill in the gaps of the abstractions, or to simply exist within those gaps. David Lynch is a true, bold, italics fancy font artist. He painted, he wrote and directed, he built furniture, sheds, any old thing. He's the kind of soul that doesn't come around often, but when it does, the universe can't help but take notice of. In 2021, I dove into Lynch's work for the first time, and for all the passion I had for cinema, it felt like it had put a missing piece into place. A sort of, oh, this is what this is all about kind of moment. It was the truth that cinema and art as a whole has this ability to be a glimmer of this deeper consciousness, and not the individual subconscious, but the broader collective subconscious. The universal mysteries, the love, the terror, and the joy. Within the writing, he creates and explores these strange specificities, these quirks and unusual non sequiturs that manage to feel true to at least some level of reality. With the camera, he creates this ethereal space. He's got this uncanny sense of timing with how he paces his scenes, the rhythm to the editing, to the blocking. It always feels slightly off. He creates these moments that feel like groggy recollections of a dream, but you're not awake enough to be secure in knowing that they're dreams. When I think about Twin Peaks, I'm always moved by the depth of the empathy in its portrayal of grief and loss. It's a show that delivers complexity by showing this odd level of sensitivity and tenderness. In this moment specifically, I can't help but think of the moment between Bobby and his father, Major Briggs. A scene that comes after tension and just general incompatibility between them, and at the diner the Major tells Bobby of this vision he had, a dream where he sees his son visiting him and he's happy and carefree.
Returning to the house's grand foyer, there came a knock at the door. My son was standing there. He was happy and carefree, clearly living a life of deep harmony and joy. My vision ended. I awoke with a tremendous feeling of optimism and confidence in you and your future. That was my vision of you.
It's the scene that comes out of nowhere, and it's so overt in its humanity. It puts forth this striking declaration of peace and love where conflict and negativity are struck down, they evaporate from the situation. It's a show that continuously revels in the small joys in life. The nightmares are present, but the luxuries and comforts are a godsend not to be taken for granted.
Look at that! Ducks on the lake.
Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire serve as the best cinematic representations of a dream state, a deep immaterial discomfort. They make identity, time, and space uncertain. They speak within the cinematic language in ways that leave you feeling off balance even after the credits roll. Twin Peaks: The Return, what has turned out to be David Lynch's final cinematic work, is one of the most deeply profound experiences I've had with art in my entire life. It had me on the edge of my seat even when I didn't entirely understand why, even within its most mundane moments. It does not operate within the traditional formats or levels of engagement movies and TV use. It's a beast unto itself. Its tension, its character arcs, its pacing is its own. It's so singular and unknowable. It's about the only work of art I've experienced that speaks to feelings deep enough that I'm not sure that the words to describe them exist, because it's simply too abstract to articulate with external language. It's a once-in-a-century, not-to-be-repeated work. I truly believe my appreciation for human expression would be shallower without having seen it. On a personal level, I can give David Lynch a lot of credit for the routines I live every day. After seeing his work and being fascinated by it, I watched dozens of interviews and talks he's done over the years. I read his book, Room to Dream, telling the story of his life, his pursuit of the art life, as he calls it. And to a degree, it woke me up. I used to be terrible for staying up till 6 or 7 a.m. and sleeping all day. I used to resent many of the everyday mundanities of life. And it was upon hearing Lynch talk about the importance of routine, of having your life be plotted and organized in a way that is conducive to your work. And I must note his particular fondness for the things we live with, such as coffee or wood.
Wood is such a blessing for humanity.
Never has someone's articulation of these things made it so clear, you know? His advice on writer's block changed the way I saw writing as both a discipline and a process. For someone whose work and attitude seems so artsy and poetic, his life and words embodied this sort of romantic pragmatism that fundamentally changed and greatened the way I perceived and appreciated life. Cinema as a medium for expression is among my ultimate joys and passions in the world, and I've never heard anyone speak of it with the profound reverence of David Lynch. He had this panel, and for the life of me, I couldn't find the exact clip to show, but in it he describes cinema as these images and sounds and music moving together in time, and they all come together to make something beautiful, and his description is something I think of often. His repeated insistence on the importance of intuition and trusting your intuition to navigate the abstractions of life is something I hold very dearly on a personal level. The sense of self, the emotions of life, and the power of art all become greater when you live by the wordless pangs and draws of the mind and heart. I love his movies so much, in part because they are completely singular, and your entry point is within this involuntary, intuitive process where your interpretation is dependent on what within the work incited a feeling for you personally. One last scene from his work I want to note, and I'll omit the context to avoid spoiling it if you haven't seen it, but it's a scene in Twin Peaks: The Return where Kyle MacLachlan's character is at a restaurant and a man playing piano strikes a note, and he hears it. And the atmosphere of the scene just changes. The notes feel familiar, he becomes transfixed, his eyes are lost in some dream, and though the cinematic language here is so simple, seemingly unexceptional, it's a moment that floors me on the deepest levels.
How can I ever thank you? I hope you realize what a special person you have dining with you.
I'm certain I'll speak of his work in the future of this channel, but for this moment it felt essential to speak about the life and impact of David Lynch, the finest artist Hollywood has ever seen.
I love abstractions, and the power of cinema to tell abstractions is huge. So it's as if people either don't have so much intuition, or they don't trust their intuition, or whatever. And there's a lot of noise in the cinema, and if you're not paying attention, because every little thing is got to be right, and you can kind of, you got to get into that world, and then trust your own intuition.